Unlucky. That's the Nothing Personal word of the day for Monday, December 8th, 2025. At the end of the rainbow is not always a pot of gold. For Notre Dame, the end of the CFP selection committee meeting resulted in a bowl of crap. Notre Dame is out. Miami's in. The college football landscape has lost its mind. We had quotes from Notre Dame, from alums, from committees, from Miami, everyone. Here's what happened. For those of you not following, although, how could you have missed what went on this weekend? So many things. But I wanted to start here because I love the concept of the aggrieved. The thing about when you're aggrieved is that you pretend that you were never on the other side. And everyone who's been aggrieved has been the beneficiary of someone else's being aggrieved. Notre Dame is a great example of that. You see, they were ranked each week, whatever network you're watching, my friends at CBS, every week. There's a big show, there's a big conversation about the CFP rankings. You can spend an hour on it. Every Tuesday it gets released. There's a live show, great content, where a committee of guys get together. I guess there could be some women in there, doesn't matter. A committee of people get together, and they look at all of the teams, and they say number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and they rank all the way down to 25, and then the top 12 in theory would be in a playoff. It didn't used to be that way. It used to be there were 4 teams in a playoff, that's it, and then they expanded it. Before that, there wasn't even a playoff. You just would have a national champion, would be the number 1 ranked team at the end of the bowl games. When the bowl games mattered, oh, by the way, the bowl games were not on January 19th. The bowl games were on January 1st. And then it bled to January 3rd and 4th and 5th and 6th, and you're extending and extending because the money's increasing, because the broadcasters are involved. Yes, Disney is involved when they're showing a bunch of bowl games, like every single one of them with a few exceptions. They're involved. So the rankings come out each week during the season, and teams win and teams lose and teams get upset. And then you've got comparisons, and then you've got debate. It is a made-for-television event. What's not? It's a brilliant move by all the college football conferences, by the FCS, by the NCAA, having the CFP committee selection show. People are complaining. They're complaining about where their team is. They love their team. They live in a city where their team is. They're an alum of the team, a booster of the team. We want to be ranked higher. We want to be ranked differently, lower. Look at us. We have 1 loss, 3 losses. Look at our strength of schedule. All these debates rage, which means everything's working perfectly. You get to the end of the season, and you have conference championship weekend. That is where 2 teams from a conference play each other, whether they've survived through a tournament, whether they were simply asked to play, whether they won tiebreakers like in the ACC case where Duke played. They won a tiebreaker with a bunch of other 6-2 teams. Whatever the reason or the season, you get a championship game. Alabama gets absolutely whipped by Georgia in the SEC championship, and what we should all be saying is we can't have that matter. We can't disincentivize teams to play in a championship game, a conference title game, if losing that game could in any way endanger their CFP prospects. And I say, come again? When you play a game, do you benefit when you win, but not benefit when you lose? Do you benefit when you win the way Indiana benefited with the number 1 seed by beating Ohio State in the Big Ten championship? And the loser, Ohio State, falls to 3rd. That feels like there was a change from a conference title game because Ohio State was 1 going into it. So it feels like that had an impact. Can you have a system where one game and its result impacts rankings, but another game doesn't? And if so, how do you choose? When the NBA, Major League Baseball, the National Hockey League, the National Football League, 4 conferences. Let's call them a conference, if you don't mind. Or let's say all of Major League Baseball is just a conference. There are set rules about playoff teams. You play a regular season of 162 games, and after that, you've got playoff teams. If there are ties, there are metrics by which to break a tie. The way Duke got into the final conference championship game in the ACC, they won tiebreakers that are laid out. You can argue what the tiebreakers are. We spend a lot of time within Major League Baseball when they got rid of the 163rd game talking about what tiebreakers are we going to go to versus your team head-to-head. If that's tied, hard to tie when you play an odd number of games, but I digress. Then you go into division, then you go into league, then you go into, there's 10 different levels. Eventually, you're going to get a winner, even if it's a coin flip, which does appear in tie-breaking rules. The reason you do that is you want to make sure that there's no committee choosing playoff teams. And that goes for all the professional leagues. College football has always had this view that they don't want to go by tiebreakers because there's no balanced schedule. And so they had to come up with a balanced schedule, meaning that certain teams don't play certain other teams. There's too many teams out there to all play each other the way they can in baseball. And even in football, when you can't play all the other teams in the NFL, strength of schedule is a thing, but it's not really a part of tiebreakers. Some years you have a harder schedule, some years you have an easier schedule, and that's just the way it goes. But college football decided no, they've got a totally different plan. Their plan is that the individual teams set their schedule. You play a certain number of conference games, and the conferences are all screwy now, given all the expansion and consolidation. And Notre Dame has been famous for never being in a conference, which means they never win a conference. They never play championship weekend. And Notre Dame has always found a way to either be in the CFP or not be in the CFP. This year, however, everybody's talking about the fact that Notre Dame's football team, remember their basketball team is in a conference. It's one of those weird things. Notre Dame's basketball is in the ACC, but their football is not affiliated. Why would their football team ever be affiliated? Notre Dame, throughout the weeks of ranking unveilings, live shows, was always ahead of Miami. Miami and Notre Dame did not play last weekend. This past weekend. They were not in any conference championships. When the final CFP was announced, Miami was in, Notre Dame was out, and what the committee said is, we had never really compared Miami and Notre Dame before. But when Miami passed BYU, who lost a game, which should or should not have mattered, I digress. Then we had to look at Miami and Notre Dame against each other, and Miami had beaten Notre Dame, therefore Miami gets in instead of Notre Dame. It really is the most poppycock you could ever hear from someone running a committee. Because when you are doing something subjective, it's all subjective. The reason why you legislate against subjectivity is that it opens the door to interpretation and it changes the conversation from exciting debate to vitriolic revenue problems. How do I make that bridge? When you make it into the CFP, the conference for the team that you're associated with gets at least $4 million. When you're not affiliated with the conference, the way Notre Dame, who was in last year, they get to keep the whole $4 million to themselves because they don't have a conference. They give it to themselves. Notre Dame has the ability to go out and cut its own TV deal. They have. Notre Dame has always been different. They've always been able to self-monetize. The benefit of self-monetization is that you are not in any way dependent on anyone but yourself and your schedule that you choose. The negative is that you can never be a free rider. You can never be part of a conference that gets money from being in the CFP that gets split amongst the teams. You can never be part of a huge TV deal, way bigger, because you've got way more inventory to sell. But they've always chosen to go independent on the football side. Now that they are in that position where they've been overlooked by the CFP committee in a very bizarre turn of events, notwithstanding the great lobbying that Miami Hurricanes boosters and alums and people did to get Miami in the CFP, notwithstanding any of that, Notre Dame finds itself in a position where they have to decide, does the way we operate make sense going forward? Should we open ourselves up to the vagaries of this committee going forward? And news came out yesterday that they think they found the golden key to avoid the debate. It turns out that Notre Dame executed an MOU with college football, NCAA, CFP committee. Ready? No other team has this. Notre Dame is guaranteed of a spot in the college football playoff next year if they are in the top 12. No one else has that. You can be a high-ranking team and not high enough and not make the CFP. It's not getting enough attention. Notre Dame has decided, and somehow they got another party to agree, that they don't want to be subject to any of the issues that take place because of conference championship games, when in theory, teams can move up and teams can move down. Even though the NCAA would tell you, or the CFP would tell you, hey, listen, we're going to ignore Alabama's loss because we don't want to disincentivize teams from playing conference championships because there's a lot of revenue at stake. You can't argue to people to act in a certain way in the interest of money when it is not consistently applied. You can't argue to a team that their conference championship doesn't matter when another team's conference championship does. It makes it way smarter for a team not to be a part of a conference at all. And the breakup in the conferences would not in any way benefit anyone except, wait for it, the NCAA. You're not going to hear much about this concept, but who do you think would be rooting for less power among the conferences? SEC, ACC, Big 10, Big 12, all the talk about super leagues, all the talk about the NCAA being nuked and neutered. Who would have an interest in everyone being independent and therefore requiring one governing body over every FCS team? Hold on, let me think. Give me a second. I'll get back to it, NCAA. I will try to think about how that would work if everyone were Notre Dame and everyone were then ranked by the same set of standards, and then the top 12 teams, or top 26 teams if they expand, or top 24 teams, or top 4 teams if they contract. Why wouldn't that be a better solution? What part of programming would the networks miss if we just had the weekly rankings and then the final rankings were the college football playoff? Would it make the conference championship weekend less interesting? No, because conference championships, which should be the top two teams in the conference, should, in theory, have an impact on the rankings. And I don't mean whenever they choose. I mean every conference championship game should be the top two teams in the conference, and the game should matter. And Notre Dame is no exception. Notre Dame should be part of whatever conversation it is, because if you choose not to play, how can that not be held against you? And that then got me thinking to the next concept about records and stats. Do you remember the conversation we had about a batting title, where at the end of a season, if you know that you've qualified for the batting title, you can choose to play or not play the last couple of games, because you just do the math. If you go 0 for 4 and the guy chasing you goes 2 for 4, you lose the batting title. But if you go 0 for 0, then no matter what the guy does, you win. There are many, many people who will choose and look at stats and then figure out a way to manipulate the schedule and the end of season schedule to be where they want to be. And I am all for it. But there's one thing you can't do. Teams can't not play. If a team is better off with a no decision than with a loss, then a team would certainly rather not play. But that doesn't ever come up. Teams have a schedule. They got to play the schedule. Whether it screws them or helps them or it does nothing because it's meaningless, you play the games that you're scheduled to play, that everyone has to play. That doesn't get debated. If Notre Dame had to play, if all of the top 25 teams had to play the final weekend of the season no matter what, it's not a bowl game because people are bowing out of bowl games, but it's the end of the regular season where the final weekend is conference championship weekend, but everyone in the top 25 plays no matter what. My solution is just that, because it guarantees another data point for the committee to make before their final ranking. My number one solution would be that the committee disappears and that it becomes totally analytic, scientific, and a computer spits out the rankings, because then we can be done with all the debating. But then what would we have done for the last 18 minutes? I didn't even get to talk about how angry people like Brady Quinn are, a friend of the show, very famous Notre Dame alum. I didn't get to talk about the fact that Notre Dame decided after they didn't make the CFP to not play a bowl game, and people are up in arms. Who cares? Who cares? What, they don't want to play in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, the Pinstripe Bowl? It's your decision. You want to forego the money? Forego the money. Don't say that you don't want to play because you're upset that you're not in the CFP. You don't want to play in the NIT after you don't make it into the NCAA men's basketball tourney. Be my guest. Your choice. We're not forcing you to play. Your kids want to play. They don't want to play. They don't really have a choice. It's what the administration wants. You want to forego the embarrassment of being in a second rate. It's like, can you imagine in a soccer tournament, Coca, like the World Cup, if the 3-4 game, they were like, forget it. We're not in the 1-2 game. Why would we bother playing? Oh, because we want to be on the podium. Why? We want to win a bronze medal in the World Cup. There's gold and there's nothing. There's winning and there's nothing. You don't see teams bowing out of those games. Notre Dame not playing a bowl game makes me laugh. They're looked at as petty, as trite. It looked like they're upset with ESPN. They're upset with the CFP committee. They're upset with the world. Some people, when they're upset, withdraw. Retreat into darkness. I always have thought that's a plan that I would never consider until all of a sudden things happen and you consider it. Speaking to someone who is well into the consideration of a full retreat into darkness, you can never say what you will do in every situation. You can only say what you will do in the situation you are in or have been in. Any ideas that you may have of how you would react in a way that you've never had to react before is pure conjecture. Don't criticize Notre Dame for not playing in a bowl game. I feel badly for Dominique Foxworth. Dominique Foxworth, he almost had it. He had before the season, hey, those Indianapolis Colts, man, they're good. No one believes me, but they're so good. And then they start off 7-1. And he's, you know Dominique. His victory dances are earned, but they are certainly in view. Well, the Colts are in trouble. They're 1-4 in their past 5 games, and that really wouldn't be the story of Week 14 if it weren't for our old Giants quarterback Daniel Jones going down with a non-contact injury. His Achilles is torn. He is out for the season, a season in which a team, the Colts, remember we did a whole segment, the owners on the sideline with a clipboard. The Colts are doing great. The Irsay family has found a way to keep going after the death of the patriarch. Well, guess what? They're done. I was thinking that does it make it worse that they went all in? Remember, they traded 2 first-round picks for Sauce Gardner. They really had this thought that this was their year, and it would have been a great story. A great story 8 weeks does not make in a season with 17 games. I don't feel badly for Indianapolis, nor do I think it informs any other team's front office about, quote-unquote, going all in, trading picks for players, believing this can be your year. Don't all of you fans want your team every year to do that? You all complain when your teams are sellers. Aren't you super excited when your teams are buyers? Even if you don't make the playoffs in baseball, even if you don't make the World Series, don't you just get excited for that moment? Well, the Colts have the moment, but their dream season's now over. And what's the lesson to be learned? That's life, baby. I'm not upset at all about that. I'm more upset about what happened at the end of the Raiders game with the Broncos. Thank God it wasn't my pick of the day. I've been thinking all night. Coca gave me an interesting thing to think about last night when the Raiders game ended. If you didn't watch it, go listen to Dave Portnoy's, what did he do? He did either a tweet or an Instagram reel, but it was a live reaction to a wager he had made on Denver, giving 7.5 or 8.5 points, and the game was over. Broncos were up 10, but then somehow the Raiders got an extra play, and they kicked a field goal with no time left to both send the game over, to end the game, and to cover, because they ended up losing then 24-17 instead of 24-14. And I was watching and listening to Dave Portnoy's reaction and his vitriolic anger toward Pete Carroll. And at the same time, I was listening to Tom Brady call a different game. And all I kept thinking about was when I was running the Expos or the Marlins and they were playing, that's what I was doing. I mean, it takes a personal toll, but there's 162 games, playoff games if you make the playoffs. Anytime my team played, I was either there or I was watching. And there's no exception, no matter what. Kids' graduation, a trip to a different time zone. I mean, I was watching games overseas 24 years ago with a contraption that had bleeps on it for runners on base that would not show me any information but whether or not there was a bleep on base and what bleep was at bat. It was like a Mattel Electronics game. How Tom Brady is calling games on Fox and not watching the team that he's responsible for is beyond me, unless there's a screen somehow and he's double screening it. But he seemed to be paying attention to the game he was calling. But I wonder whether he's aware of what went on at the end of that game. I wonder whether Pete Carroll was aware of the spread when he kicked that field goal. I wonder whether Tom Brady is aware that Pete Carroll needs to get fired, having nothing to do with yesterday's game, but having everything to do with yesterday's game. It's not about the last kick. It's about the fact that the Raiders are the worst team in football, basically, in my mind. Worse than Cam Ward. But that wasn't even the number one thing that I watched yesterday. I was fascinated to watch the Bengals and Bills. There's something about a snow game. I don't know why, but I love snow games. Now, I got a cold game with the Bears-Packers in the late slot, but I really did enjoy the snow game with Josh Allen, who seems to not lose in December. And yesterday was the day he was going to lose, and then all of a sudden, Joe Burrow does what he hadn't done all year and throw a pick and then a back-to-back pick. And that was it. The Bills win again. And it got me thinking about a team like the Bills. As Josh Allen was walking off the field, he was giving away his armband to someone. He gave away a football to someone else, and he had a toque on because it was so cold and snowy. He gave the toque to somebody else, and he goes through the tunnel. He's proudly wearing his Buffalo Bills jersey, and I love Buffalo. I love the people from Buffalo. I'm a fan for sure. But what I was thinking is that we are watching what millions of fans believe to be the greatest quarterback they've watched. Better than Mahomes, better than Lamar Jackson, better than Joe Burrow, better than Tom Brady. Why do people think it? Because Josh Allen has this ability to win, except when it matters. Josh Allen has not taken his team to a Super Bowl. Josh Allen, as he was walking off the field with another successful game in December, the player I was thinking about was Jim Kelly. Jim Kelly, the Buffalo Bills quarterback who took the Bills to 4 straight Super Bowls and didn't win one of them in the 90s, and somehow is looked at as the architect with Marv Levy of this team of losers when in fact they were some of the great winners of all time. Better than the run the Chiefs are on and now finished with of 7 championship games in a row. Better than even the Patriots at 8 championship games in a row. The Bills go to 4 straight Super Bowls, don't win a thing, and are forever viewed as the close team. Josh Allen is considered this great quarterback. He's not even a member of the close team. They've not even gotten to that point where it's the close team. And as he's walking off the field during a regular season win over the Bengals that certainly does feel satisfying, it reminded me that I've got to enjoy the victories as they come and not be as upset about losing the battles, losing the war. I've got to enjoy the moments. And it spread through my brain as I was going through that I would still not be happy as a Bills fan, even after a victory like this, that I would still be. This was so pervasive yesterday. It happened with the Hall of Fame voting, which we'll talk about next hour in baseball. It happened as I was watching Inter Miami, which we'll talk about. I kept thinking about the failures and not the successes. I have it wrong, not Josh Allen. I have it wrong, not Patrick Mahomes. How can I change it, Coca? That was a focus of mine as I was watching Josh Allen walk off the field after a victory over Joe Burrow and the Bengals. How can I change my outlook to enjoy the moments that are victories? I'm taking suggestions at David P. Samson on X because I got nothing for you. I'm taking suggestions from anyone who has where why can't I, and this is personal, why can't I enjoy a success even if it comes in the midst of what is guaranteed failure or what is likely failure? Sports, such a great example. Get back to me if you don't mind. The only other thing you need is a talking point for week 14, as you are walking into the world today, walking into work, when people say, did you see? The only other thing that I would ask you to say you saw is what happened in the Bears-Packers game, when you've got a situation where, I don't mean to be down on Jerry Jones, but I have to say Jerry Jones. We have to talk Cowboys a little bit because of algorithms, etc. But when you look at Micah Parsons and you look at the Green Bay Packers and you look at what the Bears almost did to them but couldn't quite do, and Micah Parsons on the sideline gasping for breath as he tries to realize what it is to play in the frozen tundra, as you look at Jordan Love try to quarterback his team into a deep playoff run and maybe even a Super Bowl appearance, what occurred to me as I'm watching Bears-Packers and what the talking point of the frozen tundra game, because it was freezing up in Green Bay, is that when the Packers made that trade for Micah Parsons and we thought that they had a chance for the Super Bowl, and then during the course of the season, they're not looking good, their run defense is mediocre, they're giving up points, Jordan Love is fine, then great, then bad, it occurred to me that it doesn't matter. All you have to do is qualify for the tournament. And that was my through line that helped inform me all about the NCAA, the CFP, everything we do. You have to qualify to win the whole thing because that's all that matters. Individual stats, victories during a meaningless Week 13 game. No, making the playoffs with a chance to win a title. That's it. Packers are going to be there. Bears, maybe not now. Chiefs, definitely not now. What a nightmare. So you want to talk to Samson, Coca? I don't know what happened last week. I couldn't do a show Wednesday, so we didn't get the So You Want to Talk to Samson. But I planned for it last Monday. I'm going to do it again. Every time I try to plan anything, it doesn't seem to work. But here we go. On Wednesday, you want to hear your voice in a show? Call that number, 631-377-4869. We will do a So You Want to Talk to Samson. I hope. I can't be in the promise of promising. I can't be in the business of promising anything anymore. But that would be the plan. Thank you for calling. You can also email me. I've gotten Coca. There's been a change. I think people still like leaving the voicemails because they like their voice on the show. But I'm getting a lot of emails at davidsamsonpodcast.com that are great questions, and a lot of DMs on Twitter at David P. Samson that are great So You Want to Talk to Samson questions. So feel free to just find me however you want. All right, let's review a movie. I found a way between the raindrops to watch and review Train Dreams. Joel Edgerton, Felicity Jones, Carrie Condon, a Netflix movie. A lot of Netflix talk coming up. Netflix is a movie studio. Netflix does what many studios do, is they've got a bunch of bad Sandler and Hart movies, but once in a while, they come up with a movie that is Oscar bait. They want to win an Oscar, Netflix does, the way Apple did with Coda a couple years ago. So they released this movie called Train Dreams, which is a movie about a man, an ordinary man, living back in the time of land expansion, land development in the United States. A man living a simple life. And it follows this man through the onset of construction, of cars, of airplanes. It was a hell of a time to live if you were living during that time. Let's say born in 1890 and living until 1970. Those 80 years, you saw quite a lot of stuff. I guess everybody who lives to 80 gets to say they saw a lot of stuff. How much will have changed from 1968 to 2048? I would assume there'll be plenty of things that I'll get to say. But this movie, in a very beautiful way, goes through what a man who builds train tracks. That's really his job. It's a seasonal job. He leaves his family, his wife, Felicity Jones, and he lays tracks. Some of them, like any technology project that you may work on, by the time you're done with it, it's already out of date. Some train tracks were already out of date as soon as they opened. But it goes through tragedy. It goes through redemption. It goes through life. And Train Dreams, the reason why it is looking at a Best Picture nomination and a Best Actor nomination for Joel Edgerton is that it's a quiet movie. You may not enjoy it. You have to hit it at the right time. I happened to hit it at the right time when I watched it, and I found it to be very contemplative, very emotional, very deep, very full of self-importance, which I felt at that moment, and so it all worked. If you're not in the mood for it, you won't like it, so be careful. I watched a second movie, Coca, on Saturday night. It's called This Too Shall Pass. It's not an Oscar movie. It's a coming-of-age movie with teenagers who go on a trip. I would love it if you'd watch it. I'd love for anyone to watch it so you could talk about it with me. I'm going to review it on Wednesday. It's called This Too Shall Pass. Let's talk about Inter Miami. Inter Miami is the team owned by David Beckham and Jorge Mas and his brother. Inter Miami is the team that is playing in Fort Lauderdale and then next season is moving to a new stadium right near the airport in Miami. Jorge Mas is the man who wanted to buy the Marlins, did not buy the Marlins, ended up buying Inter Miami. Inter Miami is the franchise that has been troubled from day one. When David Beckham was granted an expansion team, people have it wrong, including the announcers of the MLS Cup game. David Beckham was not granted an expansion team in Miami when he was on the Galaxy. When he signed with the Los Angeles Galaxy, David Beckham was given an opportunity to buy a MLS team at a valuation of $25 million. An expansion team somewhere for a $25 million fee. That was what he was given. The fact that it took so long for him to choose where to go, he wanted Miami, but there were times that he wanted Vegas. There were times that he wanted other cities. He just wanted a team because his team was already in the money. What I mean by that is when someone else has to pay an expansion fee of $125 million and you have to pay an expansion fee of $25 million, definitionally, you're $100 million ahead before you even start. Because two expansion teams will be worth the same amount of money once inside the league, in theory. And if one person had to spend $125 to start it and one person had to spend $25 to start it, who would you rather be? So that's the gift that MLS gave David Beckham. David Beckham, who we worked with to see about building a soccer stadium around the Orange Bowl in Miami. David Beckham, who could not find a partner to work with, finally got married to Jorge Mas and Jorge's brother. And their partnership has resulted in tremendous progress for the Inter Miami franchise. Progress is another code word for they spent money inappropriately in an effort to increase the value of their team, get a real estate deal done in Miami, and if they can win an MLS Cup, great. And I am not criticizing Mr. Mas, who is a great guy, who I enjoy talking to very much. His goal when he bought Inter Miami, whether he wants to admit it or not, is a goal shared by many owners in many leagues. Their goal is to make money, and their goal is to increase the value of their team, and their goal is to use their team in a way that benefits the other businesses that they run. Even if your business is Walmart, or your business is raising cattle, or your business is technology or hedge funds, the way you use teams to help with those businesses is that when you own a team, you are in a different level of consideration and conversation. It's indisputable that being a professional sports team owner gets you into rooms, gets you into meetings, gets you access to capital, gets you access to people that you cannot get no matter what your standing is in a community. Jorge Mas was a really important guy in the Miami community. After he bought into Miami, different level. And what he did with that team by signing Leo Messi, by bringing in Messi's guys around him, all of those great football players, the purpose was not to win the MLS Cup, which they happened to do this weekend. It was to do exactly what they've done. Mission accomplished. Inter Miami is a behemoth brand in Major League Soccer. Inter Miami found a way to get a stadium deal done years after they expected. Don't worry, that's normal, Jorge, I promise you. To have the building ready for next season, to have Messi ready to play no matter how old he is, to have the development around that stadium controlled by him. All of it has come together. And when I was watching Inter Miami win the MLS Cup and celebrate, and Jorge Mas was interviewed, and he was all excited about what it meant, I couldn't help but think to myself that what he's smiling about inside, and what David Beckham was smiling about inside, is that so often owners have a plan, and so often it doesn't work. And Inter Miami's plan has absolutely been executed to perfection. It's had issues. It took much longer than they had hoped. But when that moment comes, and you get to look into a camera as you're being interviewed when you are the champion of your league, and you know that you've got the business side locked down, you've got the on-pitch side locked down, no wonder he was smiling. Don Garber's the commissioner of Major League Soccer, and he had, like all commissioners, during your championship, you have to meet the media. Don Garber met the media, and one of the big conversations was about promotion and relegation. For those of you who don't know, promotion and relegation is that you're in a league, and if you stink, you can be kicked out of that league and sent to the minor leagues. It would be like the Colorado Rockies after last season being told you're going to AAA, and the AAA champion being told that you're now a major league team. In baseball, it's absolutely absurd because there are minor league facilities and major league facilities. You can't have the Rockies as a minor league team. You cannot have a TV deal with a network that you are playing against other major league teams. That is part and parcel to the deal. When you sign a TV deal, that you will make available 150 Major League Baseball games. It doesn't say minor league games. It doesn't say professional games, because minor leagues are professional too. It's 150 Major League Baseball games. And when you've got teams with TV deals, even with the breakup of the regional sports networks and the dilapidation of that business, it doesn't matter. It's still a large, large sum of money that these teams get. There's no chance that a league would have relegation. When Don Garber said that it was something that he was going to consider, I wanted to give him a message. You cannot consider it because it makes your American league look like a pop-up league. It makes your American league look unserious. Your argument that the other leagues do it overseas is not dispositive here in America, because in the United States, when your goal is to get your team's valuations up, when your goal is to figure out what you're going to do on the TV side because your deal with Apple was a failure, no way Can you maximize revenue for your teams in your league if your partners don't know if all of a sudden a Major League Soccer team is going to be playing in a minor league? Why Don Garber had to mention it, I can imagine his PR people right now, because promotion relegation is something that's talked about a lot when you follow the table in the EPL or various other places. You've got teams on the bubble and there's relegation and promotion, and it makes you feel good for Ryan Reynolds. Is it possible that Wrexham could be promoted all the way, even though they've already been promoted like 2 or 3 levels up through the minor leagues? That feeling of what is possible is made possible through the way the leagues are actually made, through the way revenues are made, through the way revenues are split. United States leagues don't do that. They're never going to do that. If I'm Don Garber, I don't even mention it. I don't need to say the words to make our league look more like a European league. You're not. You never will be. Embrace that fact. Don't run toward those European leagues. Run away from them. They already are trying to change. They did change their calendar to be more like it, to be more in line with European leagues, to make sure the transfer portals are all around the same time. That's not pretending you're going to be something. That's acknowledging a timeline of reality. Promotion relegation is not that at all. So it's not going to happen. Soccer took center stage this weekend as well with the World Cup draw. Just a quick reminder of the World Cup next year is in the U.S., North America, Mexico, Canada, etc. The World Cup is the one, not the Milan Olympics, which just came out and said they can't sell any tickets and that they can't get the ice rinks built and that the NHL may not show up. I'm not talking Milan. I'm talking about the World Cup. Well, the World Cup had the draw, and they brought in Wayne Gretzky and Tom Brady and Aaron Judge, and everyone was super duper excited. And all I could focus on was the debacle of FIFA giving the Peace Prize, a inaugural Peace Prize, to Donald J. Trump. It made me laugh, and it shouldn't. I should know by now that is how business is done. It used to be that you had to suck up to the president and to the cabinet. You had to pay lobbyists to have relationships with senators and congresspeople, and that's how business was done. I don't ever recall a president in my business life who required that he was the central figure of your business, that you had to go give gifts. Now, when we went to the White House, we gave George Bush a uniform when we won the World Series. Maybe even would have sent a World Series ring. We sent a World Series ring to the commissioner of baseball. Why not? All of that is sports related. When FIFA, who got so deep into bed with Donald Trump, they're so worried about what he can do to their North American World Cup, to the sponsors, to the players, to the families, that they decided the best thing to do was to bow at the ring and kiss it. And they did it in a way that embarrassed them. And it should have embarrassed Trump also, which you'd figure is a possibility. But then, of course, his birthday becomes a holiday in the national parks, and you realize that embarrassment is not something he will feel. But him getting the Peace Prize and watching the video of all the great things that he's done, and yes, there has been some peace, but my God, there's been some interesting ways to get it. We have to go to break. We have to go to break now, a peaceful break. Fine, but we've got more to say. We'll be back in just a couple minutes. There's a whole nother hour coming up. Welcome back to Hour 2. I am quite excited. We are live right now on the Nothing Personal with David Samson YouTube channel. Please hit subscribe. Thank you for staying with me all these months. We're on DraftKings Network. Thank you to DraftKings Network and to Meadowlark Media and everyone there, Dan and Bimmel, etc., who have just been so understanding of my schedule and the reality of my life. There are certain things that will take place during the course of the next period of time that will be unavoidable, and thank you all for your understanding. Life always goes on. The show mostly goes on. Today, the Golden Globe nominations are coming out. It is award season for movies, which makes me super excited and super happy. However muted it may be this year, I'm going to try to find joy in the moment. As per last hour, when I was telling you it's hard to find excitement in a moment when it doesn't result in something. But we'll see. There is a business deal to lead this hour with that has gotten, obviously, a ton of attention. I wanted to just make sure that you've got some facts on it because, again, some weird reporting about the Netflix Warner Brothers deal that was announced since our last show on Thursday. So you know Warner Brothers Discovery. You remember Warner Brothers, the studio. You remember HBO Max. You remember TNT Sports and CNN. They were all part of a big company. You remember David Zaslav and all the talk that we had on Sporting Class about him, about the NBA rights, how TNT said we don't need the NBA. They let the NBA go, and then all of a sudden they looked for different sports rights, and then all of a sudden Barkley was on ESPN, yada, yada, yada. When big companies merge, it's clunky. When Warner Brothers and Discovery merged, it was super duper clunky. You always talk about economies of scale. You talk about efficiencies. Efficiencies is a code word. When a company tells you they want to become more efficient, what they're saying is they're about to do layoffs. But okay. Warner Brothers Discovery is looking for efficiencies. They're looking to buttress their stock price, which has been lagging for a long time. So Warner Brothers Discovery decided that they were going to entertain the possibility of selling. Now, only a few months ago, Warner Brothers Discovery told you that they weren't selling, they were splitting into two different companies. Comcast has done that. There's a bunch of reasons why you would split a big company into two companies. It's balance sheet related, it's debt related, it's underperforming asset related. But Warner Brothers Discovery said, we have an idea. Let's take our studio and put it over here, and let's take our cable channels like CNN and TNT and put them over there. And we're going to make two different businesses. We'll have two different CEOs. It's going to be beautiful, as the president would say. Then all of a sudden, something happens. And a company named Skydance, which has purchased Paramount, which owns CBS, there is a huge deal that takes place where David Ellison, son of Larry Ellison, the billionaire computer tech guy, David Ellison and his business Skydance, they say, hey, we're big. We now have CBS. We now have Paramount Plus. We want more. We want to buy Warner Brothers Discovery. An epic decision by CBS, by Paramount, by Skydance. They believe that combining their companies, which would make a behemoth media company, they believe that that's in the best interest of the consumer. Wink, wink. What they actually believe over at Skydance is that combining with Warner Brothers Discovery would be the smartest way to be accretive to their stock price. So they decide that they're going to make a bid for Warner Brothers Discovery. And they negotiate with Zaslav What they don't realize, which is nothing but hubris, that we want to buy something, therefore we're going to buy it. What they didn't realize is that there would be other companies who would have an interest in buying the same thing. Netflix, Comcast, they looked at Warner Brothers Discovery and said, wait a minute, you're interested in selling? Well, we're interested in buying. Let's negotiate. Warner Brothers Discovery says, well, now we've got multiple bidders. Now we're in control. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to set a date. And so they did. Call it December 1. Submit your best bid. All right, those were good bids. Thanks for submitting. Now let's do it again. Well, what changed? Is there more for sale? Do we get more assets? Did all of a sudden something become worth more than what we thought it was on December 1st? Don't be ridiculous. Submit another bid because you're competing. Does this not remind you of something? Does it remind you of when you bought your home? Does it remind me of when you're trying to sign a ball player? Give me your best contract offer. 4 years, $40 million. That's fantastic. Give me another one. Well, wait, it's still the same guy, right? It's the same pitcher, same stats. Oh, we're just negotiating. Okay. Two can play at that game. What's the number one thing you do when you're negotiating? You don't say it's your last and final and best unless it's your last and final and best. So Skydance did not give its last and final and best when they were the only company negotiating. Netflix did not give its last and final and best when they were one of the three companies negotiating. And when you're the one with the asset and you're selling, you don't ask for last and final and best until it's appropriate. When's it appropriate? Not before the first round of bidding, not after the first round of bidding. You wait for a second round of bidding, then you go back again and you say, great job, everyone. Great job. Agents have done this to me all the time. Homeowners do it too. Great job bidding on the house. Love it. But come back again. We're not saying we're not going to take your offer. What we're saying is there more to give? What do you do when you are trying to buy something and you are being squozen for every last nickel? You are being put up against competition the way agents say there are 4 of your competitive teams trying to sign this player. You better sign him right now or he's going to go to your competitor. You don't think that's what Warner Brothers Discovery did? They went to Netflix and they said, this is about to go to Skydance. So what do you want to do? So Netflix stood up and said, we have an idea. How about if we pay you like $27 a share? And the stock was like at 18. What if we agree to give you like $83 billion? But here's the cool thing, Warner Brothers Discovery. We're only going to buy the studio part of your company. Remember when you were going to split the company? We're only going to buy half of it. You can take the other half and sell it elsewhere. You can take the other half and keep it. Do whatever you want. We're just taking half that we want. And Warner Brothers said, hold on. This bid is similar to the Paramount Skydance bid, but that was for the whole company. And you're telling me that you're giving the same amount of money, but we only have to give you half the assets? Hold on a second. This seems worth it. Netflix said to themselves, we don't want to take the cable TV networks. Why would we do that? They stink. There's no great business there. We just want what works within our company of Netflix. We want the Warner Brothers catalog. We want the movie studio. We want take our streaming power, our subscriber base, and we want to give them more. We want to give them more for their money so we can increase the monthly price and they can have a whole new catalog, a whole new library. And by the way, we love the idea of accepting an Oscar when we can get a movie studio to make Oscar-winning movies. I like it. I like that Netflix thought that this was a strategic purchase. The thing about it is that you're reading articles now where the chairman of Netflix has been spending time with the president. You know the CEO. Can you picture him? He's got the gray hair. He's always the most popular guy in every party because Netflix has the key to so many things that agents want and actors want. You've seen Ted Sarandos. But anyway, word comes out that there was an article on Bloomberg and various other places that Netflix's CEO had spent time with the president. Why does that matter? Because any of these deals that happen, picture a baseball deal where money is going back and forth. You need permission and approval of the commissioner. Otherwise, there's no deal. The commissioner, in his sole discretion, can say no to whatever trade you're doing. The commissioner can say no to whatever free agent signing you're doing. They don't do it often, but they could. When you are in a business deal and you are buying a company, you need government approval. In normal times, you would be lobbying the government for approval of your deal. In these times, you don't lobby the government, you just lobby the president. It's not how it's supposed to be, but that's the way it is. So Netflix goes to the president and starts a relationship, specifically through Ted Sarandos, and you start a relationship with the president by being famous or by being young and beautiful. You start a relationship with the hopes that that will help get your deal approved. At the same time, David Ellison was building a relationship with the president, had a relationship with the president, believed that his relationship with the president would make his deal to buy Warner Brothers the only approvable deal, and he told Warner Brothers that. When word came out that Netflix was entering into an exclusive negotiating period and that, in fact, Warner Brothers had agreed to the Netflix deal, David Ellison and Skydance wrote a letter saying, dudes, you're not going to get approved. I've got the relationship with the president. My deal's better. And that is going to create a monopoly, what you're doing. It's going to be terrible for the consumer. What we're doing, don't be ridiculous. While it may smell, feel, and touch like the exact same type of deal, we're different because it's us. Therefore, you can't approve their deal, Mr. President. You have to approve our deal. By the way, even short of that, Skydance could still enter into a hostile takeover. They could make a hostile offer. They could, when there's public companies involved, there's all sorts of things you can do to keep the game going. What came out this weekend was very much end of game type stuff. Hollywood was upset. Theater chains were upset. Netflix is going to not release big Warner Brothers movies in theaters. And Warner Brothers, during their negotiation with Netflix promised, don't you worry, Warner Brothers. We promise you we will release your movies in theaters across the country. What a bunch of horse hockey. Once these deals happen, if I were the investment banker on Netflix's side, there is not one chance that I would have in the final agreement. In the final agreement, forget PR. In the final agreement that we are absolutely stuck releasing movies in theaters. Absolutely not. The whole purpose of driving sub-revenue, which is everything for Netflix, everything, is having first-rate movies like Train Dreams, like K-pop Demon Hunters. The whole purpose of Netflix's business is to not agree to provisions. Of course, it's going to upset people in Hollywood because the old school Hollywood does things one way. Netflix is a disruptor. They do things a different way. And wait a minute, it works. Wait a minute. Netflix has the most subscribers of any service because it works. I am not in any way telling you that Netflix's deal with Warner Brothers will not happen. I am not in any way telling you either that Netflix's deal with Warner Brothers is the final word on Warner Brothers' sale. Skydance is going to get involved again. They don't like losing. There is an opportunity for Skydance to go to the government and to go to the board of Warner Brothers and say, Netflix's deal may look good, but we're ready to buy the whole damn thing, which they were. We'll buy Discovery Global. We will buy TNT and CNN and all the crap that loses money. Why would they do it? What would be interesting to Skydance to have the Warner Brothers library, and on top of that, have the channels, have TNTs, whatever sports they have. Think about what CBS already has. Think about the fact that they already have the NFL as an example. Adding to their portfolio through TNT would be additive. Netflix is not in the business of cable channels. Skydance is. I'm going to give you a wait to see about this, Coca, and it is a wait to see that I feel really sure about. Wait to see is when we tell you something's going to happen, and if it does, we'll revisit it. But we're different than other shows because when we get it wrong, we will also revisit it. The wait to see about this Netflix Warner Brothers deal is that there will be another bid for Warner Brothers Discovery. That's the entire wait to see. What does that mean? So you know that I'm playing around with you. If Netflix increases or changes its bid, but still ends up buying the company, I'm a winner. If Skydance makes any sort of noise and makes a bid, even though Netflix and Warner Brothers are in an exclusive period and Netflix has a deal that's being considered, I'm a winner. If for any reason the U.S. government turns down the bid as it's constructed due to whatever lobbying or whatever gifts or prizes are awarded to Trump, there will have to be another bid, and that will make me a winner. That is why the wait to see is so general. There will be another bid for Warner Brothers Discovery, which means there's more to this story coming. There is not more to the Hall of Fame candidacy of Barry Bonds or Roger Clemens coming. It's over. Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens will not ever be elected to baseball's Hall of Fame. Yesterday was the clearest, most permanent statement by the Hall of Fame and by the voters that Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens will not make it to Cooperstown because they cheated and because they lied. Yesterday in Orlando, 16 individuals met as part of the Contemporary Baseball Era Committee. 16 individuals met to discuss the candidacy of 8 players: Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Jeff Kent, Don Mattingly, Dale Murphy, Gary Sheffield, and Fernando Valenzuela. 16 members of a committee met and then voted. You need 12 votes, which is 75%. That's a number that also works with the entire BBWAA when the class of 2026 will be unveiled in January. 75% of the vote, it's the magic number. 75% of ballots cast. In these committee meetings, all 16 members vote. You need 12 votes to get in. They went live at 7:30 p.m. to announce the results. Jeff Kent is the only player who was elected to be in the Hall of Fame by the Contemporary Baseball Era Committee. Jeff Kent, the player that I watched play against us as when he was a member of the San Francisco Giants. Jeff Kent, who I watched play Survivor in a show that I had also been on. Jeff Kent, who we knew in the game was a problem in the clubhouse. Jeff Kent, who was full of power. Jeff Kent was never the player on the Giants who we said, don't let him beat you. It was always Barry Bonds. Jeff Kent, who has the most home runs of any second baseman, but is not looked at in any way, in my view, as the most glaring omission made by the writers, which is what the committee is for. The Contemporary Baseball Era Committee is there, along with the other era committees, to right the wrongs that are done by the baseball writers. And that makes 2 very major assumptions. 1, that the writers make mistakes. Let's stop it there and go through that. When you have been retired from baseball for 5 years, you are eligible to be put on a Hall of Fame ballot. Just getting your name on a ballot is a victory for most major leaguers. And the rule is that if you do not get more than 5% of the vote, you are taken off the ballot. There are many players who were one and done on the ballot, and the honor was just being on the ballot. Our friend Jeff Conine, he's on the ballot. He was there for 1 year and then off the ballot. What an honor. Then there are players who stay on the ballot for the maximum number of years, which is 10 years you can be on the ballot. And if you don't get to 75% in 10 years, then you're off the ballot. You're not in the Hall of Fame. What mistake exactly happens 10 different times? Just asking. For the friends out there in the media who are saying that Jeff Kent was one of the most egregious overlooks in the history of writers, that means that 10 different years he was the most egregious? Isn't egregiousness when it's a one and done and all of a sudden you're like, oh, Christ, I forgot that one. You had 10 years looking at Jeff Kent's name. You had 10 years looking at all of these names. These committees that are meant to right the wrong, how can they right a 10-year wrong? So not only am I questioning the efficacy of the entire committee structure, I am certainly wondering how a rule change would be implemented this year that was purposefully done to stop the debate around steroids. How can that be? Well, there's a new rule with these errors committees. Get ready for it. If you don't receive 5 votes from the 16-member committee, then you cannot be considered the next go-around by that same committee. Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds did not receive 5 votes. Therefore, when this committee meets again in 3 years, because it meets every 3 years, in 2028, Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens cannot be put on the ballot to be considered. No steroid debate. And then there's a second part to that rule. If you're put back on the ballot in 2031 and you don't get 5 votes, then you are permanently off the Eras Committee ballot. Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens will be on one more ballot in 2031. I promise you they will not get the 5 votes needed for election, and they will never be considered again. And that is exactly what baseball wants. They would just as soon believe that Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, and the entire steroid fiasco would never be discussed again. No matter whether Bud Selig is alive or Rob Manfred is commissioner, no matter if it's a whole different set of owners, one of the concepts that will live from generation to generation is that Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens are persona non grata within Major League Baseball. Hard stop. It's hard to believe or hard to think that the rule that was put in place was anything but punitive against the steroid guys, Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens. And when you saw that they didn't get the 5 votes necessary to be considered again next time, it all made perfect sense. I personally was hopeful that Don Mattingly would make it into the Hall of Fame. Don Mattingly did receive more than 5 votes. He received 6. That number of votes means that he can be considered again in 3 years. Dale Murphy received 6. He can be considered again in 3 years. Carlos Delgado received 9. He can be considered again in 3 years. 9 out of 16, not too shabby, but you still need to find 3 more. There's a whole discussion that takes place when you don't make the Hall of Fame one particular year, but you get 69% of the vote, and you're 8 votes shy of election. And you go around and you think, well, which 8 writers are going to change their mind? Who's going to believe that you're a Hall of Famer today, but you were not one yesterday? How are you going to get in? These committees are not like that, folks. These committees are different each of the 3 years. So the 16 members who served this year will not be the same 16 members who served 3 years from now. So it seems like it would be totally independent, that if you stay on the ballot, you get brand new consideration. And what would be wrong with that? Except for the fact that when you look at the makeup of the committee and you realize that there are a whole bunch of people on that committee who are assigned to be there by Major League Baseball no matter what you're told, you'll be told that the Hall of Fame makes up the committee. And then you'll look at the members and see the owner of the Brewers. You'll see the former GM of the Marlins, Kim Heng. And I am not impugning the work of the committee because it's hard. But you can bet your bippy that when the Hall of Fame board is named and there are owners on the Hall of Fame board, when the committees are named and there are Major League Baseball employees or owners on the Hall of Fame committees, that there are conversations that take place. Do you think for 1 second, as an example, do you think it was a surprise when Bud Selig was voted into the Hall of Fame? Do you think equally it's a surprise when Robert Kraft isn't? The reality of how this works is that there's politics, there is pressure, there is reality, and there's things that go on behind the scenes that would make a normal person cry foul. It's not just Hall of Fame committees. It is committees. It is the local church committee you're on. It's the board of your building. There is stuff going on behind the scenes, and the expression, if you don't know who the sucker is at the poker table, that means it's you. That expression works for anything. If you're not aware of what's going on in a committee you're sitting on, then you're not a part of what's going on a committee you're sitting on. And that is not shameful. There are people who want to stay above the fray. Was I surprised in any way that Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens did not get the 5 votes? Of course not. That was a guarantee. I even had it as a wait to see on November 5th that Bonds and Clemens would not get in. Of course, I had the other part of the wait to see on November 5th that Murphy would get in, and Dale Murphy did not get in, so I don't get that wait to see correct. But I was damn close, Coca. Bonds and Clemens not getting in was the simple part. Why Jeff Kent got in, God, I can't wait to hear about what went on. Now, it's all confidential. You're never going to hear on the record or off what actually happened in the meeting. It's not like I'm going to call up my friend Tony Perez and say, Tony, come on. Used to work with me. Who voted for who? How did it all work? I would never put him in that position. But I can certainly speculate what went on during the debate of Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens. You can debate all you want, but you know that the votes are coming in no. Who are the 5 people you think? I don't even want to speculate. I'm happy for Jeff Kent. I'm sorry, but when we played the Giants, Jeff Kent, we were like, yeah, he's good. He's good. He's a good player. Bonds is who we were afraid of. Did you see Tony Clark this weekend? It was some kind of special. He's awesome. I'm in on Tony Clark. Him running the union as a member of the on the ownership side and on the players' side. You look at who your representatives are. I've told you before that Tony Clark being in the union is critical to the owners and to the commissioner. Having Tony Clark still in his position is critical. And Tony Clark is still in his position. The union did not make any change as they start to negotiate their new CBA. Tony Clark spent 4 days recently meeting with players on the executive council, the non-Scott Boras executive council. Tony Clark has made a power play to wrest control away from Scott Boras, and he's doing it. Tony Clark spent 4 days meeting with the executive board, and he did it so that they would all understand and be prepared that there's going to be a work stoppage. And then he came out, and Bob Nightingale wrote about this in the USA Today, And he came out and said, listen, we're fully prepared for a work stoppage. There's no question about that. Tony Clark specifically said we don't go into a negotiation trying to miss games. We go into a negotiation looking to move the industry forward, protect and advance player rights. Do you know that there are laws in place of how both sides have to enter into a collective bargaining agreement negotiation? Did you know that you have to negotiate in good faith? Did you know that all of the talk that you hear from the commissioner and the head of the union about how much we are going to negotiate and how much we are interested in the industry and in the players and in the commissioners and in the value of teams and in the fans, all of that is because they have to. Tony Clark is not interested in moving the industry forward. Tony Clark is interested in getting his players paid. If that moves the industry backward, it doesn't matter to him. The commissioner of baseball is not interested in moving the industry forward. He is interested in ensuring that the value of teams continue to increase and that his record of labor peace and not missing a game through the entirety of his career will stand. The commissioner is interested in making sure that there are no voting blocks that can be used to usurp his power. Tony Clark is interested that there are no coups that happen within the union to take away his job or his livelihood. Acting out of self-interest is not something to criticize. Acting out of self-interest is actually something that I respond to, that I respect. And I would have no problem with that being an honest quote. Would you? If Tony Clark had come out and said, listen, it doesn't matter to me if there's a salary cap. It doesn't matter to me what the luxury tax threshold is. What matters to me is that a majority of my players vote in favor of whatever the deal is. Why is that not an okay goal? I think it's a wonderful goal, actually. I think it should be the goal in every negotiation to get to a finish line that satisfies the people on behalf of whom you're negotiating. But that's not how this is going to work. What's going to happen is Tony Clark and Rob Manfred and the people who work for them are going to be positioning themselves from now until the beginning of the season when they start doing regular negotiations, all through the season, all-star break, playoffs, off-season, and all of it ending in the work stoppage that will happen when the CBA expires in December of 2026. And all of the posturing and all the statements will be to mislead you. So I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to give you quotes that will be so clear that you'll say, my God, that makes a whole lot of sense. When Tony Clark talks to you about salary cap or moving industry forward, the way to deal with that if you are the commissioner is by continuing to increase the minimum salary. Have you noticed what Adam Silver's doing in the WNBA collective bargaining negotiation, though it has not worked yet, and there will likely be a work stoppage there, even though they keep extending the deadline? Something that baseball is very unlikely to do. Have you read where all of the issue is about the league minimum salary? The league minimum salary is an issue that is a hot button for negotiators on both sides in collective bargaining of sports teams. Baseball is especially a hot issue because of the number of players who play at the minimum. And the reason why Tony Clark wants young players to get paid more is that what he's realizing, and he cannot fight any longer, is that young, overperforming players are more valuable than old, underperforming players. And the top of the union, the top of the free agents, Kyle Schwarber getting a 4-year deal offer from Pittsburgh. That's not a sign of a healthy industry. That's not a sign of a union saying, look, we're getting the bottom teams to pay up and bid up for the top level of the union. No. What the union's trying to do is to get the Pittsburgh Pirates to increase their payroll. What they're trying to do is get their players paid more contractually. What they're trying to do is get the rookie wage scale, the minimum before players hit arbitration. Keep that going higher. It used to be 150 grand. It's like 780 grand now. They want it higher, higher, higher. Tony Clark does not need to go public with what his issues are. Neither does the commissioner of baseball. Everyone is very clear. PR is not going to change in this early stage, no matter what Tony Clark does publicly, no matter what the commissioner does publicly. Our public view, at least mine, which I would encourage you to at least consider, is that all of this noise is just nonsense. You don't need to start paying attention until next March. Give yourself 15 months of grace. Give yourself 15 months to enjoy the on-field product. Give yourself 15 months to ignore all of the positioning and politicking that are being spoon-fed to you through the media, because it's all crap. I'd like to tell you it's going to end, but it's not. There'll be responses that get leaked to this Tony Clark discussion about what his goal is and meeting with the players and all the stuff about rookie pay scale. Of course, baseball has to respond because they want to make sure that the owners see that there is a PR battle happening. They never asked me that, Coca. We were asked all sorts of stuff with the Marlins, and when we were part of this, what are the issues that matter to you? Don't talk to the press. We'll take care of that. We were never asked what our view was of the PR plan, because my PR plan during bargaining would be to zip it. Nothing personal. Pick of the day. What a weekend. I had it. I was ready to go undefeated. I was ready to have the Packers win, but not win by 7 points. Everything was coming together so beautifully. Thursday's game, you may not remember when the Lions beat the Cowboys. We told you that. Cowboys basically finished unless Philadelphia and the Eagles completely fall apart, which is not impossible. Saturday, we told you Inter Miami was going to win. That was a fait accompli. And then Sunday, we had the Bears plus 6.5. I was looking for the middle. I had it. Everyone, Tom Brady was like, here's what's going to happen. The Bears are going to score at the end of the game, and they're on the road. They're going to go for 2. They were down by 7. So when they score, they'd be down 1. We're covering, and then they'd either win the game, I hope they wouldn't, lose by 1, in which case that's the Packers middle that I had. It was right in my hands. And then Caleb Williams floats an interception. He underthrows a pass so badly in the end zone. I'm happy my Packers won because, of course, I'm rooting for the Packers. But for Bears fans, sorry, you did not get raided. That's what I'm going to use from now on. The verb raided is when you're losing the game, but then as an underdog, you still cover on some meaningless points at the end. We are at 148 and 151 as we head toward December. God, we're in December. Coca, I got to count the number of shows we have left, and that's the number of picks. Well, there's a few extra picks I do because I got to get above 500, or else that's another wait to see loss. All right, we got a Monday night game, big game. Chargers, Eagles. I love this. There's talking points when I'm sitting with CBS, who I love, and they've been, again, so great to me. There's talking points with analysts and broadcasters. And one of the things that comes up is the importance of promoting the game and the importance of the game. Really hard to promote in baseball that game 8 is important or game 28 is important. In football, it's easy to argue that every game matters because there's so few games in the season. What I love, though, is that we are now getting promotions from all the networks that cover the NFL saying a critical Week 13 game. That's funny to me because obviously. And so, yeah, Eagles and Chargers, it's critical. It's Week 14. If your team doesn't stink, although I could argue, why isn't it just as critical for the Raiders and the Titans? because they're going for the number 1 overall pick. So I could argue that every game is critical. So yeah, the Chargers and Eagles, whatever. I'm taking the Chargers plus 2.5 over the Eagles. There's something going on with the Eagles, like a Super Bowl hangover, the likes of which dynasties don't get. You never saw the Patriots hungover. You never saw the Chiefs hungover. You saw them going for the throat. You saw them wanting not 1 ring, not 2 rings, not 3 rings. You saw them wanting multiple rings. I love that way to be. The Eagles just don't feel that to me. That's why we're taking the Chargers plus 2.5, and we're taking, I'm telling you, the Eagles are not even going to make it to the NFC Championship. Did you watch LeBron James score 8 points in a game this weekend? Because I did. Dear LeBron, thank you very much for letting us know that your consecutive double-digit scoring streak was not important to you, that you were not even aware of its existence. Thank you for clarifying when only a day earlier you had done something to keep the streak going that was totally inappropriate, like playing in the middle of a blowout and finding a way to get to double digits and then leaving the game immediately, but then making sure that once you were criticized at all, once people were calling the streak into question or saying that you are selfish, that the next day your streak ends and you pass the ball to a teammate who hits a 3 and you win a game, and you get to say, streak? What streak? Didn't even matter to me. But I'm not going to be that guy, Coca. I'm not going to be the one who says that his 1,297 consecutive double-digit scoring streak is not unbelievable. I'm not going to be the guy that says that criminy, that started in 2007 and it just ended now at the end of 2025. That's like Cal Ripken-like, totally Iron Man kind of stuff. I'm going to give it amazing credit. LeBron and his longevity ought to be complimented. Whatever it takes, whether it's done with magic marker, whether it's done with syphilis, whether it's done with pills or needles or just the beautiful nature. Whatever. I'm going to compliment it and appreciate it. I'm just going to ask, just again, be honest with us. It's okay to say, man, I really figured that he would miss that 3-pointer that was only a 48% chance of it going in, but he was open. So I thought we'd go to overtime and I'd score another couple points and the streak would continue. Or why couldn't he look at the camera and say, man, you guys were hurting my brand. You guys were accusing me of things I don't want to be accused of. So I went into the game saying I am purposefully not scoring 10 points. And it's funny because last night LeBron scores 29. And helps the Lakers to another victory. The Lakers have been playing great, obviously, with Luka and Austin Reeves and LeBron as their quasi-big 3. I just feel like LeBron does so much to protect his image. He does so much to try to, I guess, make sure that we view him in a certain way, that it's hard for me to believe anything. I can look at the box score and say, well, David, he went 4 for 17. That's how it's going to happen. You're not going to score 10 points. But that's not true. You drive to the lane, you get to the free throw line, you find a way to 10 points. I wish he had just come clean and said, yeah, I had no choice. My PR guy told me. I do love lawsuits. Got a lot of attention, Coca, for the Le Batard segment that we did where I said to Jordan Hudson, like, please sue Pablo Torre, please. It would be my dream just because it's such a frivolous, ridiculous lawsuit, and it would just further embarrass her and make Pablo look better, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I do love lawsuits, and I meant what I said, that you haven't lived until you've been sued. There's something invigorating about seeing your name in a lawsuit and then saying, wait a minute, I didn't do that. Or sometimes you say, uh-oh, I did do that, and I just got caught. There's a lawsuit that was filed, and it's a very important one to talk about. Let me give you the story, which is that Georgia is suing a player, one of its former players, a guy named Damon Wilson, because you see Damon Wilson played for University of Georgia and got paid to play because college players are professional. They now get paid. And then he decided that he wanted to go play with someone else, and he went to Missouri. He actually became the top pass rusher, 4869. He became the top pass rusher for Missouri. Georgia said, well, wait a minute. We had a deal with you. We gave you money to play for us. You promised you would play. You signed a contract you would play. Then you left. Well, Georgia said, hold on. We want money back. It's a civil suit. And here is the clause that needs to be fought over, needs to be settled in court or in arbitration. The clause is that when you have a contract that you will do something and you get paid to do it, and then you don't do it, why would you be able to keep the money? That sounds very familiar to other contracts claims, doesn't it? That sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? A message to players in college. You are not sophisticated enough to be understanding what is happening when you are signing deals. You want the money. I get it. You're young. It happens with child actors. It happens with young people in any business. You are young and you want money, and you don't read the fine print. Have you ever heard of George Michael? And you don't read the fine print. But it's a pretty simple message I would like you to have. When you promise to do something and in return you get paid to do it, you have to do it. You can't have it both ways. I'm tired of it. These college players and all the people who are in favor of college players getting paid, guess what that means? That comes with responsibility. Do your job. You can't just walk away and transfer to Missouri. But nobody's ever sued like this. No university has gone after a player like this. It's the equivalent of a team going after a season ticket holder who doesn't pay, or a sponsor who doesn't pay, knowing you're going to get bad publicity. Is it bad for Georgia to be suing a player? Do you think that that makes them look terrible for looking at a teenager, or he could be 28 years old, and saying, you did something wrong, now pay up? I think it is wonderful. I think you have to have accountability on both sides of a contract, or why sign a contract? When you know that you have done something wrong, there's two ways to get around it. You can undo it, or you can pay the penalty for having done it. These college players are not going to get it both ways. These lawsuits are going to be successful that these schools are going to bring, and they're going to start bringing more of them. When players start getting sued and the floodgates are now opened, the settlements are going to be very clear. The contract terms are going to become more clear. You're going to have breakage fees. You're going to have portals within these collective contracts. You're going to have outs. It's like in professional sports. You get a no-trade clause or you don't get a no-trade clause. You get the ability to leave or you don't get the ability to leave. This is going to become a standard provision, and what Georgia's doing is putting itself in position as a representative of all the schools, where all people want when they're doing business is they want clarity. And this lawsuit is going to help start the process of providing the contractual clarity that is required so that everyone knows the rules, because it's all brand new. Players getting paid, players moving on. It's all new. So how does it end? The usual, tears in a journey. It is true that Damon Wilson will stay at Missouri. It is true that Damon Wilson will have to pay a settlement amount. And it is true that this will be the first of many cases of its kind. Why? It's just business now. We'll be back Wednesday. This is nothing personal.